Podcasting from Portland East to Portland West, from Big Pine Key to Pacific Beach, and from San Juan to Guam, this is All Across America. Aaron, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Aaron, you're the director of debate for the University of Michigan's national championship-winning debate team. Very excited to have you on the show. So you're the defending champions. When you won last year, was it as big as the Michigan football team winning the BCS championship?
We like to think so. I know debate is not as audience friendly. We don't get to sell tickets, but no, the proximity was great. The football team won in January, and then we won the national debate tournament in April, and it was great. We had never won. We'd been competing there since 1971, and
Wow.
It was so great to finally win it. I think the football team had drought of about 25, 30 years, and so we definitely looked to kind of inspiration to them. A lot of our alums and supporters are also big football fans. They have season tickets, so it was so great to kind of win those in such close proximity, and kind of definitely really did feed off of their great run to winning a national championship in football for the first time in a long time.
Yeah. So the program has been in existence, the debate program, since 1971.
Well, it started all the way back, I think, in 1903, and there was kind of a famous communication professor that started the program, and he did a lot of kind of debate competitions with other major universities, both domestically, and the team traveled over to Europe and other places. And kind of the modern era as I know it is kind of 1960s, early 1970s. And then for the first time in 1971, the team attended the national debate tournament, which has been around for, almost 80 years. And so, kind of try to attend it every year. We've been really close to winning the national debate tournament. I think we've been runner-up 7 times, including 2021 through 2023. And so, finally winning it in 2024 was just, a great culmination of so many close attempts and hard work. And so happy for the student coaches and everybody, everything that kind of went into doing that. It was such a great culmination.
Wow. So you all were the runner-up for 3 years in a row, and then you finally win. It's like being the Buffalo Bills, but actually winning a Super Bowl.
Yes, definitely. There's a lot of analogies to that. And if we would have been unsuccessful and lost that 4 times in a row, it would have been exactly the same thing. But thankfully, this one had a different ending. And looking back in the past, I think there were two other examples of a team that had been there for 4 years in a row, and in all 3 times, basically the 2 other times, Northwestern University, Emory University, the 2 other examples of that, they basically won one of the 4 years. So it's just really hard to win kind of at the national debate tournament. It's the top 78 teams in the country. All of our, main kind of peer competitor institutions have teams that are there. And so just like in anything, college basketball, football, there's so many other great teams that even if you have, a really strong team, you think you've got a good chance. It's very tough, and kind of everything needs to go your way. And for us, all those things did happen, and it was kind of, our time, and it was, very, very rewarding for everybody.
Yeah, it makes victory that much more sweeter.
Of course. No, it was very, it was a very exciting time, and no, everyone, that's something we'll obviously all of us remember forever.
Yeah. So how did you get into debate? Were you a high school debater?
Yeah. I think that's kind of where most people start, at that middle school or high school level. I'm from South Florida, and was in high school like anybody else, and just kind of gravitated towards the debate program. We had somebody, a very esteemed, longstanding coach. Her name was Rhoda Radow, and she was kind of very intimidating and serious, but she had built up this really great debate program. And at my high school, it was kind of athletics number one, but after athletics, debate was the next kind of big thing. It was a huge program, hundreds of students, and I remember everybody got kind of Letterman jackets. It's it's like you were an athlete. There was a lot of athletes and cheerleaders on the debate team, and so that really attracted me towards debate, and just kind of got hooked immediately. Went to kind of the novice or the beginner state championship at the Florida State University my first year, and then started going to summer camp for debate, starting Penn State University, and then went to the University of Michigan for 2 years for summer camp in 1994 and 1995. And that just kind of got me interested in Michigan, got me hooked in debate, and immediately I was I was all in and sold and have been doing it ever since 30 plus years. The debate's the kind of thing just kind of grabs you, for that person that's interested and passionate.
Yeah.
It just kind of, it's almost, addictive in a way. And you can just really get into it if you're interested in that kind of thing.
And in college as well, you were a debater?
Yes, yes. So Michigan was my my top choice for college after spending 2 years there at the summer camp. Unfortunately, never got off the wait list, but I did receive a full debate scholarship to the University of Kentucky and debated there for 5 years. My mentor there was Dr. J.W. Patterson, and he was kind of a legendary debate coach. And I did okay in debate, but then graduated, and my partner had 1 year left of eligibility, and so he got me to kind of stick around for 1 year to help coach him in his senior year. And we had a great year, and he ended his run in the runner-up of the national debate tournament in 2002. And that's kind of successful stint in coaching him enabled me then to get hired at Michigan the next year, and starting as the assistant director, and then got promoted director in 2010, and have been there ever since. And so, but yeah, it was kind of a great run there, and I kind of always knew I wanted to be at Michigan, and kind of an unconventional way to get back, but I'm so glad that
Sure.
I did, and couldn't imagine being anywhere else. It just I think it's the perfect place.
Awesome. So, how do you coach debate?
Yeah, we have in Michigan about 2 dozen plus students that do it, and the kind of the main thing we do is we take them to other universities and colleges that have debate programs and host debate tournaments, and we try to kind of match them up to see how we stack up against them. And so we spend basically all of the kind of fall and then spring. Usually, the national debate tournament culminates in March or April. Just traveling the country and taking our students to compete against the best. And it's very kind of just like anything else, sports and everything. You've got practice, a lot of assistant coaches, meetings of the overall team of different teams, scouting, kind of, looking at your opponents, seeing how, what they do, how you think your arguments are fair against them, testing out your arguments in advance, always researching and doing new arguments. And so, yeah, just like in anything, kind of practice makes perfect. And you want the debaters to do as many practice debates as possible, do as much research as possible. Research is awarded kind of, the most recent evidence and studies, the most qualified evidence research that you want to use to support your points. And, we do our best to kind of, coach up the students, get them interested both in debate and kind of arguments that they enjoy researching that maybe sync up to what they're studying academically. And, try our best to put them in the best position to succeed against the other top programs and students from across the country in all these tournaments that we attend, every week or every so weeks, in the
Mhm.
fall and spring semesters.
So, is it a one-on-one, or are they mostly tournaments that you all are attending?
So mostly tournaments, and are the kind of the debate we do. There's a lot of different forms of debate, both in high school and college. But what we do is called two-person or policy debate. So it's a team of two, and they debate against another team of two from another college or university. And every year there's different topics. Kind of every school votes on the topic they want to debate for the year. This year we're debating kind of labor reform, or increasing collective bargaining rights for employees. And there's an overall topic, and then there's an infinite amount of subtopics, so it doesn't get too stale. And one of the things about policy debate, two-person debate, is you have to argue both sides of the issue. So you just kind of can't say the thing every time. If you're going to a tournament, that tournament has 8 rounds. 4 of the times you have to support the resolution, the other 4 times you have to oppose it. And so that's, to kind of get you, well versed and understand that there's multiple sides, to an issue, and it's very intricate. And so it kind of teaches you that, switch side debating, arguing, both sides of a particular policy resolution. And so that's an important skill that, the participating in debate gives you.
So, is that for every tournament this year is collective bargaining, labor relations, or is that for an individual tournament?
No, every tournament, the resolution, it's kind of a, long process. It starts in April, where everybody proposes, here's my idea for the topic, and you kind of have to do some research and submit a paper, and then those get vetted, and maybe we'll have about a half dozen or so proposals of different topics. And then every school that kind of does debate, every university gets one vote to, hey, which is the area that we should do. And then there's a long voting process, and then we get the general area that we're going to debate. And then we take another month or so. There's a meeting every year that's hosted by a university, and they come up with some different languages for the exact resolution, the exact wording. And then there's another half dozen or so options on that. Everybody votes and they release the topic in usually late July of every year, where you know the exact topic of what it is. And that topic stays the same for the entire year. Tournaments start in
Yeah.
September, they conclude in March, early April, and it's
Wow.
the same topic, but they purposely pick topics that are large and, have a
Right.
lot of different nuances and sub issues. So, for this year, for collective bargaining rights, giving more collective bargaining rights to employees, in one round, you could just focus on federal employees and then, talk about, whether it be the shutdown or just kind of, President Trump, and others could
Sure.
give it for specific different industries, sectors. And so for maybe, gig delivery workers, and there's kind of an infinite amount of different areas that you could focus on, to give these additional labor rights and things. And they try to change the topics up every year. There is a new topic, but they try to different areas. So maybe have a domestic topic, an international topic, and a legal topic. And so they try to rotate those every few years, but try to give everyone as much experience with different important topics that are possible, but also things that are very large, likely that are not going to be addressed by Congress, or to make sure that there you have good area to debate on. And sometimes the topics get recycled year after year because things aren't done legislatively to address them. And so we've debated things like nuclear proliferation and climate policy, and big issues that are kind of at the forefront, or very important from a policy perspective. And yeah, it's a great way to kind of train people, that students that are interested in going to those areas. And also a lot of them may align with what they're researching and majoring in, and their overall regular college academic work. And so it's a kind of great overlap.
It sounds like some of these topics will be come up again 10 years and 20 years from now, for
Yeah.
better or worse, I
Oh,
guess.
definitely. I mean, I've been in debate now for over 30 years, and we've definitely, every 5, 10 years, it's something about executive authority or climate and greenhouse gases, or, the economy, labor. And yeah, I mean, these are big things that there's not easy solutions to, that are very politically, divisive, and people have a lot of perspectives. But I think it's good that the students know that there's not just kind of, one way of thinking. There's all these different, people have different ideas, and forget to them to learn about them, even if they may not kind of change their overall fundamental values and things, knowing that there's other sides and people have different perspectives, kind of the civil notion of debate, being able to argue important policy issues, but in a civil, respectful way. I think that's one of the real important things that debate teaches.
Yeah, and just getting back to the structure, because we have a very general audience, and even myself just trying to understand it. So collective bargaining rights. So that's the general theme throughout the year. Are there subtopics that they will have to debate against? You said it's a 2-on-2 team. Are those subtopics given out ahead of time? Are they basically presented day of? How does that work?
No, I mean, there's not kind of a parameter. It's basically, once you get the resolution of the topic, then it's up to everyone, the teams, the coaches, to kind of come up with, all right, now that we know this is the general thing. If you're affirmative, you have to increase supporting, collective bargaining rights for employees. Now, what are the different subtopics, and how will that impact other things? And so, how will that impact, if we do that, how would that impact the overall U.S. economy? How would it impact the Federal Reserve, and whether or not they're
I see.
thinking to increase or decrease interest rates based off of, labor participation, wages? Wages could increase if more people have collective bargaining. If federal employees have collective bargaining, what could that do to relations with the president or executive power? Being able to kind of to do things quickly, if there are natural disasters, or even foreign
Right.
wars or conflicts and things like that. So, kind of thinking about the topic is, what, by doing increasing collective bargaining rights, doing labor reform, how could that positively impact the economy? Having checks on the a unitary executive, things like that. But then also, you have to be negative, say that's bad half the time. And so by doing that, how could that potentially be bad for the economy? How could it impact the upcoming gubernatorial elections on November 4th? How could it impact the midterm elections? And so you're just looking for kind of commonalities and linkages of things, how doing kind of an unexpected, large, radical proposal, how that affects politics, the economy, all different impacts of life. And everyone then will spend a lot of time researching it and seeing. The topic came out in July. Our first tournament was at Northwestern University in September. And so you've got a lot of time to do that research. And then usually between tournaments, there's several weeks or even a month. Our last tournament, there was a big tournament at the University of Kentucky at the end of September. Our next major tournament's coming up next weekend at Gonzaga University. So that gives you a good month to kind of continue to do that research, refine your arguments, see what the debates you had, and then that'll give you additional ideas of research and areas you want to pursue. And so it's kind of an ongoing thing. You never run out of things or arguments to say. There's an infinite amount of studies and articles and things you could be reading. And so, yeah, you could do 24 hours a day of research and still never come close to kind of exhausting all the different ways in which, new changing actions and policies could then affect something else, either expected or unexpected.
And so an actual debate, how many minutes is it per side? Or the rebuttals after that? What do the judges look at?
Yeah. Yeah. So in college debates take about, I'd say 90 minutes, about an hour and 45. You have two debaters debate two debaters, and everyone gets two speeches, constructive and a rebuttal. Constructives are 9 minutes, rebuttals are 6 minutes. And then there are cross examination periods of 3 minutes. So everyone has to ask one of the debaters questions for 3 minutes. And then as a debater, you have to answer questions for 3 minutes. And yeah, that adds up to just a little bit over about an hour and a half. It kind of, the debate starts out, you get the pairing. So it'll say, Michigan is on the affirmative, they're debating Harvard on the negative, and then you have about 30 to 40 minutes to prepare for that debate. I mean, you've done a lot of research in advance of the debate. You have a lot of coaches that you can kind of talk to and strategize before the debate occurs. And then the debate itself takes about an hour and a half or hour and 45 minutes. And then judges, usually in preliminary rounds, at a typical tournament, maybe there's 8 preliminary rounds. You have to support the resolution 4 times, oppose it 4. And then there's one judge in preliminary rounds, and that judge has maybe 30 minutes or so to decide at the end who they think did the better debating, either the affirmative or negative. And then at the conclusion of the preliminary rounds, you see how well you did. The best team would have, probably won all those debates, be undefeated, 8-0. And then you have some others that are 7-1 and 6-2 and 5-3. And then those will advance into the single elimination bracket, just like in, college basketball, kind of it's usually a round of 32 as opposed to 64 or 68.
Mm-hmm.
Single elimination where you debate each other until you have a winner. And when you get to the elimination rounds, there's generally a panel of judges, maybe 3 judges, 5 judges, up to 7 judges, obviously always an odd number. And then eventually you go through that elimination bracket, and a champion of that particular tournament is crowned, who did the best. And the sides are assigned in the preliminary rounds, affirmative, negative. But then when you get to the elimination rounds, there's coin flips that determine which side you are, either affirmative or negative. If you win the flip, then you get to decide which side you want to support in that particular round. But so a lot of, kind of parallels to sports, and the brackets and single elimination and kind of the pressure and the results. And a lot of times, the debates are very closely contested, and it could be split decisions and verdicts, and take a long time to decide. So there's a lot of, human pressure and drama, just like, sports or any other competitions.
Sure. And so you're either affirmative or negative within one debate, but after that round is over, it can switch and you can then become the opposite side or the
Yeah,
same side.
yeah, and
Okay.
basically, the goal is that have to be affirmative and negative an equal amount of time. So if they're 8 rounds, 4 and 4, 6 rounds, 3
I
and
see.
3.
Okay.
Sometimes there's an odd number of prelims, and then just so a coin flip determines which you are. But they want you to be well versed, and so they don't want you defending collective bargaining rights or the expansion of collective bargaining rights every round. Just doing that over and over is not going to give you as much insight. And so half the time you have to defend it and half the time you don't. And also it gets, debaters to maybe have to argue for something they may not personally believe, on important issues.
Yeah.
There's only kind of, one you probably have, if you thought about it, views, but debate also teaches you, hey, even if you don't personally believe something, at least in this particular debate or half the time, you're going to have to argue it. And, it may not change your own fundamental beliefs, but it forces you to say, okay, that, there are just with anything, there are multiple perspectives, there are different, ideas about how to do things. And it just kind of exposes you to a lot of things, and, kind of, widens your mind, and gets you to kind of research outside your comfort zone and maybe what you thought previously. And even if you don't, kind of radically change, just the understanding of others, and kind of seeing, multiple perspectives, increasing your critical thinking. Those are all things that, this form of debate is trying to get you to achieve.
And I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think there are professional debaters. Although you could say the political class could be professional debaters. But what do a lot of your students? What professions do they go into? Post college.
Yeah, it's such a wide spectrum, both in terms of like what our majors the debaters are, and then also what they go into. We've got majors. Probably most common is political science or public policy, or things like literature, science, and the arts. History, economics, and things like that. But on our debate team currently, we have majors that are in the Ross School of Business, that are in the College of Engineering, that study things like physics and chemistry, and even, through the years we've had kind of pre-med students. And so, our alums, they go back, our active alums, supporters, all the way through the 1960s and 70s. And there are many, lawyers and, judges and kind of people in the legal field, but there's also professors and politicians, and, half dozen medical doctors and hedge fund managers, and, all different, politicians, all different kind of, aspects of things, because debate teaches you all those things, things like public speaking and critical thinking, and answering and asking questions, and operating in a tough environment, dealing with pressure and triaging, arguments. All those things, no matter what you go into, can help. And so I think those are valuable skills. And when we talk with our alums, they say that they did a lot of things while in college, but they spent so much time on debate, and kind of the skills they got from the debate, they think have been most formative and helpful for them being successful in their everyday lives.
Yeah,
That's why they support the program so much, and give back. And so, that is
great to hear.
that's great. But they do a lot of things.
So, have you had people change their minds? That you've seen folks go from freshmen to graduates. Have you seen they've changing their personal politics because of debate, or has is that more ingrained?
Sometimes I think that people definitely, change and evolve, but it's sometimes hard to know exactly, how much of it to attribute to debate. Anytime people get to college, it's a really transformative thing, kind of coming to a new place, interacting with so many new people. And that's why it's tough sometimes, kind of, when you're recruiting students to debate in high school, kind of, they're telling you their interest level, and kind of, wanting to pursue it. But then, how they'll, be 2, 3, 4 years down the road once they're there and kind of exposed to, a university and all the things that it offers, is very tough to tell. But yeah, I mean, college is, definitely a place where you're learning so many new things at a higher level, and getting exposed to great teachers and other students, and, living with new people. And so, definitely have seen a lot of both change and maturation of the debaters once they
Right.
get to college in those 4 years. And yeah, I think it's just anytime you start learning about new things, and really spending a lot of time researching it and looking into, if not kind of fundamentally changing, you definitely, think about things kind of in a different way. And, I hadn't considered that, or that'll at least kind of, get me to change my mind a little bit. But yeah, over, a lot of issues, economic and social and others, kind of researching the arguments, being exposed to them, debating back and forth, also meeting other, people at debate tournaments. One of the great things about debate is that you get to, go to these tournaments at other colleges and universities every few weeks for, if you stick with it for up to 4 years. And so you're kind of interacting with, debating with, the best from other colleges and universities of different types. And so that just, you get to meet so many other, new and great people from a lot of different varied backgrounds, and they have their own kind of thoughts. And any time you're interacting with them, and interacting with your research that you do, it's definitely gonna, open your mind and get you to think about things. And it's all just kind of part of that process. And so, exposing people to arguments, and getting them to think about things and research things, is just a great way to progress. And I think that's one of the great things about debate.
And how do you coach for folks who are proponents of collective bargaining? How do you coach them, particularly folks that are strongly opinionated one side versus the other? How do you coach them to argue essentially against their own beliefs?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you try to, get them a little bit, at least temporarily, to kind of detach and, say that, this is a 90-minute argument and, we kind of want you to, one of the skills is that you want to kind of take it from this different perspective. I guess, like actors, if you're kind of saying you're doing something, hey, you may not really think this or say this, but you're kind of putting on a performance. And that's another big thing of debate is persuasion and kind of getting someone to believe something, and that's just it's an important skill. And even if you may not personally believe it, if you've done the research, if you know a lot about it, then you should be able to pull that off, because most of the times we try to pick topics to where they're not totally one-sided, and it's not something that's like so controversial that there would be no arguments for it, and this is very obvious, and it's just very clear. There's something like economic or labor policy. There's people on different kind of ideological perspectives or think tanks, or there's and a lot of things. There are good things about a proposals, there's bad things, and it's all kind of about how does it play out, and also which things are more important, the time frames of certain things. And so for most of these proposals, there's it's not cut and dry, and there are different things. It's just kind of about how do you order them in magnitude of importance, or kind of what's the most important to you. And so try to say that, hey, it's an academic exercise, it's an academic debate. This is not, like an election or something. And
Right.
so we want you to just kind of play it out. And we think that those are going to increase your skills and be, very, good for you. And then, hey, through that process, maybe that may cause you to look at it a little bit different. And we think that is good. And so, generally, sometimes there is some pushback, but overall, I think the students are game to participate in that and see the value of it and kind of enjoy it. And it's an academic, intellectual thing that's very, very important and very helpful to them. So they really kind of embrace the challenge of it, even if they may not personally agree with it.
I think that's the important point, is that just understanding that these topics are not so heinous that nobody would want to argue for them, that they're broad, that there are positives to both sides. It's just what outweighs the other. Let me ask you this: in terms of you've coached a lot of students, what separates the good from the great, the championship level students?
Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, kind of debate students, they are, kind of the cream of the crop of students. Because even going through high school, to be able to balance their academics and debate at all these tournaments and travel, and to be able to get into a place like Michigan, they have to be, at the very top. And so just to do that, they've got to have great time management and efficiency skills to maximize the amount of hours in the day they have. And when you're going to these tournaments, you're missing, a day or two of classes. And so to be able to then make up for that and still
Right.
be at the very top level is so impressive. And I am always just so impressed by how they do it. I mean, we track the grade point average of the debate team very closely. It's usually average GPA is about 3.85, 3.9%.
Wow.
Usually there's a kind of even a correlation that our very best and most successful debaters have been our best students and are kind of have 4.0, if not perfect grade point averages, while accomplishing and winning all these debate tournaments. And I think the two work hand in hand, especially depending on if what their majors are. If their majors are things where the research they do for particular topics really help them and increase their knowledge, the research they do they can integrate into some of their classwork. And a lot
Right.
of classes, there's a lot of questioning and answering with professors and other students, and the debaters always look really, great there. But having just a really good work ethic and being able to do research in a very efficient way is very important. And then the other side of it is just kind of the personality. You're looking for people that really perform well under pressure, don't get rattled, don't have nerves, because in these debates, especially as you get to the national debate tournament, things like that is just very important. I mean, there's big audiences, and the decisions can take an hour plus. And so there's
Ooh,
just a lot of downtime.
torture.
Some things, yeah, it is, because it's so important. I mean, they've spent their so much time doing it, and so especially as they get older and they're they know this could potentially be their last debate ever, and so you're really looking for students that with kind of Neil's just nerves of steel and don't get too high, too low, and can really perform under pressure. And yeah, just like you're looking for you know leadership positions or politicians that you really want, if there's a crisis, them to be able to respond. Same thing in debate. If they're having an argument they haven't considered, that they can come up with good things in real time and information process and triage and figure out what's the really important things. And so definitely looking for those, and I think those separate the kind of very best. They're smart and talented and they research well and are organized, but then can handle all the pressure and don't let things kind of distract them and are just really kind of focused. And those are the students we're looking for.
I mean, just to be the ability to be able to think on one's feet. If you are an elected official, you're going to have questions, thrown at you from journalists, reporters, and the public. And I
Yeah.
could see how that would
Yeah, no, and
translate.
there have been many famous, politicians, Supreme Court
Sure.
justices. Debate has been a common background, and I think they've very articulated, talked about why their experience in speech and debate have really helped them. They're just kind of great skills to have, especially at the most important positions we have.
Yeah. And in terms of the GPA thing, I think if you want something done, give it to a busy person, and that's what I recognized in college, and that if you got too much time on your hands, that's when you get into trouble. And I think for your students, they've got a lot going on.
Oh yeah, no, I mean
That's impressive.
you've got to have your calendar planned. There's not a lot of downtime. We've got a great debate office at the university, and so the students are there. They work on debate. They work on schoolwork collaboratively. It's open late, and so I think it gives them a great resource. They use each other, especially our older debaters. They've been there before in that same step. They can give great advice about classes and professors,
Yeah.
and just kind of they all work together collectively, which I think really helps them. And kind of it's not like athletic tutoring, kind of that specialized, but it's kind of a different level that collective nature of it, I think, helps them both in their debate and their academics.
So let's turn to debating itself. I'm interested in hearing, how you coach different traps. I think they're called turns. How do you recognize them? How do you avoid them? Just maybe you could walk us through some of those.
Yeah. So just like with anything, I said, debate's all about preparation. So like there's for us a web page, it's called a wiki, where everybody kind of shares, what their arguments are, affirmative and negative. Debate used to be like on paper. We used to have photocopy our evidence and come around with these tubs, but now everything is digitalized. So everything's kind of done on Microsoft Word, and it's called verbatim. And so basically, like when you have a debate, you give, let's say, your first 9-minute speech, you'll send out kind of your speech on, it's called an email chain or thread. And so everyone, your opponents, your partner, the judges kind of have, what you're saying, your studies, your statistics, and everything. And so, everything's kind of about scouting, looking for that all the information is kind of out there. And also a lot of the debates are recorded. The debates are recorded, video, audio, and those are also available too. And when we were debating the national debate tournament, some of those, they're on YouTube and have been watched thousands, tens of thousands of
That's
times. And
great.
so you never want to be surprised. Sometimes that's inevitable, because if someone's deploying an argument for the first time, there's not going to be a record of it previously. But for the most part, things have been argued previously, and so you've got a record either on a video or from a web page. And so you try to talk about those as much in advance as possible. So we're debating Northwestern, we think they're going to say this is what our response is going to be. In debate, you just don't kind of think about one level. You say, oh, we're going to say this and they're going to say that. And you kind of go back and forth as many different ways, because there's an infinite amount of ways that something could turn. And so you just try to do your best in predicting and try to map out, if this happens and this is what I'm going to do. And so most of the work is done kind of in advance, but sometimes you're thrown for a loop. Something there was no evidence that has been done previously or was going to be done. And so you kind of want to think you need to scenario plan and say, okay, these arguments haven't been run yet, but I think there's a good chance they could because it logically connects to the topic. And if it is, these are the things I'm going to say. So just it's all about trying to decrease the element of surprise or working through what you're going to do and working through that with your teammates and your coaches in advance. And sometimes, when we engage in practice debates just amongst our team, we'll have them assume the roles of others. So say, all right, now, we're obviously us, but our opponents in this round, we want you to emulate, one of our opponents from a different school and then have that debate in advance. And it's so much better to do those practice debates and kind of those simulations because then when the debate actually does occur, you've got a good chance, an idea of what you think is going to happen. Anytime we deploy like a new argument, if we're going to come up with a new affirmative or something totally new, we try to have a practice debate or two with it before the actual tournament. So then we could see, okay, what would the opponent likely say? And if we think this is their strategy, then, this will be our response to that. So as much as we can do that, on the front end, we try. You mentioned your previous question, kind of the turn. And so, that's just something where, if you say, if we increase collective bargaining rights, then that'll actually strengthen, the U.S. economy and it'll increase GDP or wages, something like that. Then a turn would just be your opponent saying the exact opposite. And they'll say, actually, no, if we, if we increase collective bargaining rights and that increase wages, then that could increase inflation. And then the Federal Reserve would be concerned about the impact on the economy. And so then in their next meeting, they would increase interest rates and that'd be bad for the stock market and everything. So basically saying the opposite of what you do, or you saying you're actually would help the economy. No, in fact, you could hurt it through these different ways. And so the worst thing you could ever do is try to say by doing something you would cause this positive result, and then your opponent is more prepared or through a different avenue would say, no, your intention of doing something positive would actually, cause a recession because of this way. And so you want to try to be best prepared to that and have the best connection into, the argument that you're doing. But it's a lot of back and forth, the cat and mouse, and like you said earlier, just kind of it's about weighing and assessing kind of what's the most important, and a lot of that is the framing from the debaters themselves. They've got to do that, argue which is most important, why, time frames and things like that. The debaters have to frame the arguments in the best possible way and characterize them in things most advantageous to them.
And so you're saying there has to be you're sending some of your prep work and research ahead of time to the judges?
Yeah, so almost like contemporaneously in real time. So if one of our debaters is about to give a 9-minute speech, a minute before they start giving the speech, they'll send out the
I
speech.
see. Okay.
So, and that's so that kind of the judges, the other teams can follow along in real time. Academic debate is at a very high rate of speed. So our debaters, when they debate, probably are speaking at like 300 to 400 words a minute. And the reason is because all the speeches are timed. You only have 9 minutes, 6 minutes. And so the
I
thought
see.
is that if you're going at a higher rate, just like with podcasts and things, if you do, 1x, 2x,
Right.
talk about
1.5.
more arguments in a limited amount of time
See.
because it's faster. And in policy debate and academic debate, the judging is specialized. So the judges in these debates are current college debate coaches from across the country, former college debaters, and so their ears are trained to hear a faster rate of speed, and so it's not a big deal for them. But this way, when there's also, in addition to the speech occurring itself, when the judge or the opponents have a Word document of it, they can both, hear it in real time, but also scroll through and look at the research themselves. And they also, it's a good check saying, oh, this particular team is claiming this, but actually this doesn't really support it, and just
I
allows
see.
them to kind of to see it and fact check it in real time.
So, I mean, I think that's really important in that there's folks that I think can be skilled debaters and make an argument without much to back it up. But what you're saying and the structure there is that it's very hard to get away with that.
Yeah. Basically, you have to have all of your research, your evidence, your statistics, your studies, have them right there with you to support it. So you just can't say, according to Professor Jones, and there's no, your actual the backup, the actual study, everything itself is right there, the URLs, and so the PDFs. If people wanted to check in real time, they could just do that very quickly. Now, sometimes there's some disagreement over, well, you're saying this, but you may be kind of exaggerating, or your piece of evidence is 4 paragraphs, but if you look in the middle on the small highlighted, there's this caveat, which are not really. So there's still some disagreements, but yeah, you just can't kind of, make up things. you have to, all the arguments you're making are backed up by all the research and everything you've done. So to give everyone a chance to check it. And that basically ensures that it's because everyone has access to it, because they can find themselves, it decreases the incentive to, to make things up because it's so easily verifiable and checked. And you wouldn't want to be, called on that or have your arguments undermined. And so causes people to have a high quality of evidence research, knowing that it's open source and open to scrutiny by anybody looking at it.
And so you mentioned you calling somebody out on that. Is it the idea of a foul, or is it basically in the follow-up debate you're calling out that their argument was not good?
Yeah, I mean, if it's hard to do contemporaneously because the debate is about 90 minutes, and you do have each team is given 10 minutes of preparation time. So during the debate, it's non-speaking time, and they can kind of use it to prepare their speeches. And yeah, sometimes it can happen. So it hasn't always been this way, but now people, when they're in a debate, are allowed to Google something, use the internet, and could find something in real time. But you're under a lot of pressure in a debate, and you don't want to maybe spend the time that way. So if you find out something in the aftermath, then yes, the next time you debate that team, you would say, last time we debated, you said this, but that actually is not the case. And so I wanted to let you know that. And yeah, you could say, because you did that last time, you should lose this round. So sometimes it may not happen in real time, but eventually it'll kind of catch up to you. And there's a limited amount of teams. We go to tournaments, there may be 100 plus teams, but it's generally at all the tournaments we attend, it's the same teams, the same top teams. So you could debate another, big opponent or rival, half dozen times in a year. So there'll be other opportunities for you to kind of debate the same team, maybe even the same side, that you've had previously.
And so you're coaching a lot of young people. I mean, these are kids in many respects, 18, 19, 20, 21. How do you distinguish for them? And I mean, these folks are so smart, but it is hard, and debate is not the real world. And so how do you coach through, the goal in having an argument and a conversation in real life is not necessarily to win, it's to get a sense of understanding. I mean, how do you walk that line?
Yeah, it's really difficult because, especially for us, like a lot of the students that we recruit and ended up, really interested in Michigan are people that are really interested about winning. And, it's tough. University of Michigan, the motto is leaders invest. And you started the podcast with football, and it's whatever we do at Michigan, football, basketball, hockey, gymnastics, everything. Michigan's trying to compete for national championships and wanting to win. And I think that's kind of part of the culture and DNA here. And I think students that kind of come here are attracted to that. And they spend so much time, they're spending, our top students, in addition to being full-time students and being great students, they're spending dozens of hours a week researching and practicing on debate. And then the tournaments themselves are marathons. You're there for 3-4 days. I mean, 16, 18-hour days. And so they put so much time into it. And sometimes it can seem like life or death because this has been their major extracurricular activity. They've devoted so much time to it. They're so interested and passionate about it. They kind of view it as a reflection on themselves. The pressure there, is to win both internally and externally. But at the same time, you do your best as an adult to coach someone that has a lot of perspective to put it in the proper context. And, it's an academic exercise. It's an academic game, but it's not life or death. And, I think that really helped me. Like I said, that Michigan was the runner-up of the national debate tournament 7 times. 5 of those times was me as the coach, and I also was the runner-up at the University of Kentucky for 1 year, so 6 total times. Never let that kind of define you, and it really only kind of prepared that for us eventually actually winning and being the national debate tournament champion. But no, it's not just about the wins and the losses. Really, it's the relationships. It's the teammates, even your opponents. I mean, seeing them, knowing that having debated each other for they stick with it 4 years, going to 8, 10 tournaments a year, that they're going to be lifelong friends with both their teammates, their coaches, their opponents, and things like that. How debate informs both your academics in college. Helps you to get internships and eventually your job and your family, even other things. Those are the real important things. Now, if you can win some debates in the middle, that's great. But
Yeah.
the wins and losses are one thing, but the other things, I think the community, the people, the times you spent, the good times, those will be the things that you really do remember. And yeah, I think that's just sometimes in the moment, especially if there's some heartache, it's tough to do that. But if they, play the long term, the long game, then I think they do realize that. And even if you're the best debater, you're going to experience a lot of losses. And so one of the things debate really teaches is how to experience loss and disappointment, because it's something
Yeah, the
obviously
resiliency.
you through the rest of your life. And so, putting yourself out there, being vulnerable. I mean, losing debates, even if you're the best debater in the country, you're going to lose a lot of debates. And so that
Yes.
losing graciously, I think, is a really good skill. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been in debate for over 30 years. My lifelong friends, teammates, coaches, still friends with all these years. Met my wife through the activity of debate. And so wins and losses are one thing, and obviously we'd all like to win more, but the community, the camaraderie, the relationships, those are the things that it's really all about. And so we want it to be healthy. We want to win debates, but we also want people to experience those things and kind of put debate in a larger perspective. And sometimes it's harder than others to do, but I think that the students usually have a pretty good attitude about it and do see the bigger picture of debate.
Yeah, and I wanted to call it one thing that you had said is that folks become lifelong friends with their opponents. That's really cool. I mean, that's what it's all about to
Yeah,
me.
yeah. So we when we did win the national debate tournament, we defeated Emory University in the semifinals. They were our big rival all year. We were number 1 and 2, and all the four students involved were all really good friends. And then about a month later was the high school debate national championship, and I was helping administer that. And I saw the four students just at a table, kind of hanging out and talking. And I just thought it's amazing how they had been, rivals all year for multiple years, and had been in these high profile debates, and obviously only one team could succeed in the end. But then seeing them still, that they were really good friends and talking like none of that had happened, I thought to me it was a great testament to all of them, and showed that, you can kind of be in the battle and in the heat of the moment, but then also, put it past you, and those relationships will sustain, even if, the wins and losses were one thing, you didn't achieve your result. And I mean, myself personally, I debated my wife several times. She was a national champion winner
Oh
in
my
college,
goodness.
and she beat me several times, and I didn't let that get in the way of us being together now for almost 25 years. And
Wow.
so there definitely is a bigger element to just the winning a 90-minute debate or so. It's the bigger picture, and
Yeah.
definitely that, I think, is an example of that.
So how is it and I don't wanna get too personal, but, you're both you and your wife are debaters, and every couple and my wife and every couple in the face of the history of Earth have had disagreements. Do you handle those differently as debaters, or is it very similar to everyone
No, I
else?
mean, despite being this, debate coach for close to 30 years, my wife, like I said, was the national champion, and, she's a lawyer. And so sometimes it's hard for me to get edge my chin. But no, I think actually it's the opposite. When, you have kind of debaters in a relationship or something like that, you have people that both are debaters, you kind of realize that, hey, now we're arguing just for the sake of arguing. And so you kind of stop yourself, and you sometimes you revert back to debate mode. And sometimes part of debate is just taking the opposite position even if you don't believe it. And then sometimes even in your day-to-day lives you fall into that trap. But because if you have a lot of experience doing it, you kind of, after a moment, you step back and say, I'm no longer a
You
debater. I
recognize it.
don't have to argue the
Yes.
opposite side even if I don't think it. I'm just arguing for the sake of arguing. And you stop yourself and you kind of laugh. So
Yeah.
because we have so much experience doing it, and we know about that, we could stop ourselves. But yeah, I think it can happen. We run at Michigan the largest high school policy debate camp in the summer. We have hundreds and hundreds of students that spent
Wow.
their time 6+ weeks with us. I came to the camp 2 years, about 30 years ago, and that was so formative for me. And a lot of times we talk to parents, they love the experience for their kids. They come home, immediately want to come back, but they do say, it's tougher at home now because of the camp, the training. Our son or daughter is arguing with us more, challenging some of the rules, but the parents still have to just kind of keep the parent trump card that hey, this is not for discussion.
Right.
But sometimes, yeah, kind of arguing a lot or getting into it, either for relationships or all these different dynamics, we can certainly. There's not just kind of questions. Oh, this is because I said it. No, you want to kind of argue or get to the fundamental thing, and sometimes that could definitely cause some disagreements.
I think there needs to be a debate camp for parents as well.
No,
Maybe just a
yeah, no, I think so. I think, maybe, hey, you've given us a good idea to get into the market, for that,
a
the
business
wholesale
opportunity.
audience, but yeah, no, it's a great skill, and, well, and a lot of our parents of the campers, they did debate themselves, whether at the high school or college level, and then they want their son or daughter to be able to experience it, and then a lot of times with siblings, it's kind of, hey, the older student has a great experience, and so the younger ones kinda wanna follow, and so there's these like families of debate, and yeah, it's no, it's great for them.
What's your advice for young people listening who may be a high school level debater or interested in becoming a high school level debater or even college?
Yeah, no, I'd say I'd say pursue it. Debate is for 30 plus years has been the best thing that I've done. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. The skills that it gives you, the speaking and critical thinking and research and everything are just such valuable skills today for both, for college, the professional world. Talking with so many debate alums, pointing to debate as being the formative thing for them and the thing most responsible for their experience. And so I definitely think, you should do it. These days, there's kind of a thing, I know there's so much pressure on younger students to do so many things. And that's just something you need to decide, I think, kind of, do you want to do a few things, few extracurricular things, at a very in-depth level, or do you want to do, a dozen things kind of very superficially? I don't know that there's a right answer to that. I think people would give you different answers, but debate is something that really probably does require a lot of time and
Yes.
attention. So it's not something you can do and then, pile up with another, half dozen things if you want to be good at it. I mean, it's kind of democratic in that you get out of it what you put in it. There's no shortcuts, and so you can't just spend a very minimal amount of time and expect to be, one of the very top debaters. It requires a tremendous amount of practice and research and effort. But anything, if you want to be, kind of the best at something, you can't do it casually. It's going to kind of require that, and so be honest about if you have that kind of time to devote to it. But I mean, yeah, starting at an early level now, when I started, it's kind of your first year in high school, but now debate is becoming more popular even at the middle school or even in some places elementary school level. And
Wow.
in South Florida, where I'm from, they've started integrating even to the curriculum of in elementary school. Now they maybe will go to a term or two, very limited amount, but yeah, you can start it early. Sometimes it's difficult because it does require resources and specialization and coaching and judging and things like that. And so really it requires buy-in from parents and schools, administrators, teachers because it does require, resources to support, and there's a finite, amount of money and things and other groups to support. So kind of getting involved there, I think is important. But yeah, start out either the middle school or high school level. You have the opportunity to participate in, a summer camp and program. I think it's great. Both that'll help you from a debate perspective, but also being on your own in the summer just gives you a lot of life skills. Parents always talk about that, having to clean
Yes.
your room and do your laundry and wake up kind of on your own gives you a good idea of what it'd be like to be a college student and an adult on your own. So, it's great from that perspective. But yeah, see if your school kind of offers it. If not, there's still a lot of kind of outside help you can get but it's a great thing to participate in and get you, exposed from an academic and research perspective, and also allows you to meet, a bunch of great people that, potentially could be, great lifelong friends. And yeah, it's kind of the best thing that I've been involved with, and would love for as many other people to experience it as possible.
Awesome. Any foundational texts that you could recommend, videos from history?
Now the things are kind of becoming a little bit more digital. And so YouTube channels are kind of the new thing. Like, so Michigan Debate, we have a YouTube channel. A lot of our big, debates are there.
Right.
And so you could kind of check those out, especially, like our debates in the elimination rounds of the national debate tournament. Contemporary Debate is a book written by my mentor, Dr. J.W. Patterson from the University of Kentucky, and then also David Zarefsky, who was the debate coach at Northwestern University. That was kind of the book that I, read when I kind of first got introduced. And there are a lot of academic debate textbooks. There's a lot of different kinds of debate. We talked about policy debate, which is 2-on-2, but there's others. There's Lincoln Douglas 1-on-1 and public forum, and there's also speech, and there's a type of debate that emulates the United Nations or Congress. And so there's a lot of debate academic textbooks, and there's a lot of debate in academia. A lot of different, communication departments have debate. I taught debate and argumentation at the University of Michigan, and so we got to do a lot of use some of those textbooks. But yeah, there's the contemporary debate's kind of the one that I grew up on and started, because those are two kind of debate luminaries of two big debate programs, but a lot of different kind of academic textbooks that if not like formal debates, just kind of get you started on arguments and claims and warrants and reasoning and just real fundamental stuff that even if you're not in debate competitions will just help you, construct arguments for conversations or for when,
Yeah.
writing essays and papers and things like that. And can be very helpful to kind of get a start on.
Great. Well, you mentioned you have tournaments coming up. What's next for the team?
Yeah, so we're headed to Spokane, Washington next weekend for a tournament hosted at Gonzaga University. And so that'll be a big college tournament. Then we host at the University of Michigan a big national high school tournament. We're expecting about 200 teams to be on campus for the weekend. We end the first semester at Wake Forest University. That's a really large tournament in the mid-November. And that's it, kind of in college debate, which what's nice is that there's no debate because of Thanksgiving, Christmas, finals. We kind of take off the last 6 weeks
That's nice.
of the calendar, and then we restart at a tournament hosted by Georgetown University in January. So we'll go all the way then through, we'll be at some tournaments, and then that culminates in the national debate tournament hosted by the University of Houston in the end of March. And
Wow.
we hope to do really well there. That's always kind of the last big tournament of the year, but that'll end our college debate season. And then we'll kind of pivot towards recruiting. And in class of 2030, they have until May 1st to make their decisions for college.
Wow.
And then our annual debate camps will start in June. So debate's a year-round thing, both
Yeah.
from the college tournaments, the recruiting, the camp, everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a 12-month thing, and there's always something to do.
Wonderful. Well, Aaron, thanks for joining us, and best of luck to you and your team this year.
Oh, thanks. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for having me. It's great talking to you.
All Across America is produced by me, Marco Vig, in Ridgefield, Connecticut. Visit us on Instagram at All Across America. Check out our website, allacrossamerica.com. There's an interactive map with all our episodes, and there's a Contact Us page where you can send your reactions, guest ideas, and suggestions. So get in touch, stay connected. To me, that's what podcasting is all about. Thanks for listening.